Who do you think you are, flying into restricted airspace without clearance? The F-22 pilot's voice crackled with utter contempt as they cornered the old silver aircraft. Can you imagine the nerve? The woman inside remained silent, her face eerily calm, despite the deadly situation unfolding around her, her heart pounding but her resolve unbreakable. Air traffic control prepared to issue a forced landing order, with tension reaching a breaking point that could explode at any second. Then, her voice came through on Channel 7, a frequency thought dead for over a decade. Oh, the shock of it all. And the entire sky fell silent in an instant. Who was she, really? And why did one simple command over the radio make the heavens themselves stop and listen, as if the world held its breath? Stay tuned if you believe real authority doesn't shout, it just speaks once, and every engine listens for the whispers of legends that echo through time. Haley Brooks, 36, operated a small medical air transport organization from a dusty airfield in Nevada. How lonely yet determined her life must have been. To everyone who knew her, she was simply a skilled pilot who specialized in emergency medical deliveries to remote locations where roads couldn't reach, and time meant everything, every second a potential lifesaver. Her aircraft of choice was a silver Cessna 421B, old, weathered, but meticulously maintained and secretly modified far beyond its original specifications. Talk about hidden power under that humble facade. The plane looked ordinary enough, but hidden beneath its aging exterior were upgrades that would make military engineers take notice and gasp in awe. Enhanced navigation systems, encrypted communication arrays, and an engine tuned for performance that defied the aircraft's modest appearance, pushing limits no one could imagine. Haley herself was equally deceptive in her simplicity, blending in like a shadow. She lived alone in a small hangar apartment, kept to herself, and spoke little about her past. Why the mystery? What secrets did she guard so fiercely? The local aviation community respected her skills but knew almost nothing about her background, except that she had once served in the Air Force before mysteriously disappearing from all public records, following what official documents vaguely described as an incident involving a reconnaissance unit. Oh, the intrigue that must have swirled around her. What they didn't know was that Haley Brooks had once been part of something that officially never existed. A shadow unit that operated beyond the boundaries of conventional military protocol in places that didn't appear on any map for reasons that were never documented. Can you fathom the danger and isolation of such a life? On this particular Tuesday morning, everything changed with a single emergency transmission that hit like a bolt from the blue. The call came through on a frequency reserved for absolute medical emergencies, desperate and urgent. A research station located deep within the boundaries of Zone Echo was reporting a critical situation. A scientist had suffered severe cardiac arrest, and the nearest hospital was over 300 miles away through impossible terrain. How terrifying. Every moment slipping away. Zone Echo wasn't just any restricted airspace. It was a classified military zone where unauthorized aircraft were intercepted without question, where shoot-first protocols were standard operating procedure. Yikes. The risks were insane. The airspace had been closed to civilian traffic for over 15 years, and the penalties for violation included everything from immediate arrest to becoming a target for military intervention. No mercy given. But Haley had heard something in that distress call that others might have missed. The code words, the specific phrasing, the way the caller had structured the emergency request, sharp instincts kicking in. Someone was dying, and the clock was already ticking relentlessly. She made her decision in seconds, her pulse racing with determination. There was no time for official channels, no time to navigate the bureaucratic maze of military clearances and emergency authorizations. Imagine the frustration of red tape in a life-or-death moment. By the time the paperwork was processed, the person at that research station would be dead, gone forever. Haley fired up the Cessna's engines, their sound echoing across the empty Nevada desert like a defiant roar. She had made this type of choice before in another life, when the stakes were different but equally life or death, heart-wrenching decisions that haunted her. The difference was that back then she had official backing, unlimited resources, and a team that understood the risks, brothers and sisters in arms. Now she flew alone, carrying the weight of the world on her wings. As her aircraft lifted off the runway and banked toward the forbidden zone, Haley's mind automatically shifted into the tactical awareness that had once kept her alive in the world's most dangerous places. Wow! The focus and precision she mustered. She calculated wind patterns, fuel consumption, optimal flight paths, and contingency plans with the precision of someone who had once navigated far more treacherous skies, every detail a shield against disaster. The moment her Cessna's transponder crossed into Zone Echo's boundaries, alarms began screaming in military control centers. Across 3 states, chaos erupting everywhere. 2 F-22 Raptors, the most advanced fighter jets in the world, received immediate scramble orders. How intimidating. These beasts of the sky, their mission was simple: intercept the intruder and force them down by any means necessary, no holds barred. Haley saw them coming on her radar long before they appeared in her field of vision. 2 deadly shadows racing across the desert sky, closing fast like predators on the hunt. The first F-22 appeared off Haley's left wing like a metallic predator, its sleek form cutting through the desert air with lethal grace, chilling to the core. The pilot's voice crackled through the emergency frequency, sharp with military authority and barely contained aggression, dripping with fury. Unidentified aircraft, you are in violation of restricted airspace. Turn back immediately or be intercepted. This is your final warning. Haley didn't respond, her silence speaking volumes. She simply maintained her heading, her hands steady on the controls, her eyes fixed on the navigation display that showed her still 40 miles from the research station. Every second of delay meant less chance of saving a life, and she had already calculated the risk long before crossing into forbidden territory, weighing her own fate against another's. The second F-22 materialized on her right wing, boxing her in with mathematical precision, trapped, or so it seemed. Through their advanced targeting systems, the fighter pilots could see directly into her cockpit. A lone woman in civilian clothes displaying an unnerving calm that defied all normal human responses to finding oneself surrounded by weapons capable of vaporizing her aircraft in milliseconds. How did she stay so composed? At the military command center buried deep beneath Nellis Air Force Base, the Situation Room erupted in controlled chaos. Hearts racing. Multiple screens displayed the radar signature, communication logs, and real-time video feeds from the intercepting aircraft, painting a picture of impending doom. The duty officer's voice cut through the tension with increasing frustration. Who authorized this flight? Why hasn't she responded to our warnings? This is a classified zone. She could be photographing sensitive installations. Unthinkable. A young lieutenant, his uniform crisp and his confidence evident, leaned back in his chair with a dismissive smirk. Probably just another civilian pilot who thinks she's special. Maybe she figured her little medical emergency gives her the right to ignore military airspace. These rescue types always think the rules don't apply to them. Ha, amateurs. But Colonel Marcus Weiss, a weathered veteran whose chest bore the ribbons of 3 decades of classified operations, studied the tactical display with growing unease. Something didn't sit right. Something about the aircraft's flight pattern, the pilot's absolute composure under extreme pressure, and most of all, her complete silence triggered memories he had spent years trying to forget, ghosts from the past rising up. "Channel 7, he said quietly, his voice cutting through the chatter like a blade sharp and final. The room fell silent, a hush of anticipation. Several junior officers looked confused, but the older personnel, those who had served long enough to remember operations that didn't officially exist, slowly turned toward their commanding officer with wide eyes. "Sir?" the lieutenant asked, his smirk fading as he sensed the shift in atmosphere, uncertainty creeping in. Colonel Weiss leaned forward, his scarred hands gripping the edge of the tactical display tightly. "Open, Channel 7. If she's who I think she is, then we're not dealing with a rule-breaking civilian. We're dealing with a ghost. Unbelievable." Meanwhile, 30,000 feet above the Nevada desert, Haley finally keyed her microphone the moment of truth. But instead of responding to the fighter's demands, she switched to a frequency that hadn't been used in over 12 years. A channel that existed in the gray spaces between official military communications, a frequency known only to those who had operated in the deepest shadows of national security, forgotten but not gone. Her voice, when it came, was calm, measured, and carried the unmistakable authority of someone who had once held the power of life and death in her hands, steady as steel. Echo 0 to all interceptors. Mission override Ghost Key Alpha. Verification 7, Bravo 6. The effect was instantaneous and profound, jaw-dropping. Both F-22 second immediately ceased their aggressive posturing, falling back to escort positions rather than intercept formation, a complete turnaround. In the command center, the young lieutenant's headset slipped from his suddenly nerveless fingers, clattering to the floor in the stunned silence that followed pure shock. Channel 7 was more than just a radio frequency. It was a key to a vault of secrets that most people in that room didn't even know existed, buried deep in history. It had been the exclusive communication channel for Phantom Recon, a unit so classified that its members had no official rank, no service records, and no recognition beyond the knowledge of those few who had worked alongside them in the world's most dangerous places, heroes in the dark. Colonel Weiss stared at his communication board as if it had just spoken to him in a language he thought was dead, his eyes wide with disbelief. His voice, normally strong and commanding, emerged as barely more than a whisper. "Ghost Key Alpha. That's an authorization code reserved for personnel who don't officially exist. People who gave up their identities, their recognition, their very names for operations so sensitive that even we—" He paused, swallowing hard. "Even we weren't supposed to know they existed, my God. It's her." The room remained frozen in absolute silence, time standing still. Every person present suddenly understood that they were witnessing something unprecedented, the return of someone who was supposed to have vanished forever, someone whose very existence challenged everything they thought they knew about how their world really worked. Mind-blowing. On the tactical display, the Silver Cessna continued its steady flight toward Zone Echo, no longer pursued but now escorted by two of the most advanced fighter jets ever built, a guard of honor. The aircraft that minutes before had been treated as a threat was now being accorded the respect reserved for the highest levels of military authority. And in that moment, everyone in the command center realized the same terrifying truth. They weren't dealing with someone who had broken the rules. They were dealing with someone who had helped write them profound respect washing over them. From initial contempt to a moment of absolute shock, a seemingly nameless voice just made the entire sky stand still, astonishing. This isn't just a command code. This is a reminder of heroes who fought in shadows so deep that their identities have become legends themselves, enduring through the ages. Do you believe there are orders that don't need to be written on paper but only need to be carved deep into the memory and reverence of those who have witnessed them? Think about it. Comment Phantom if you believe in the power of these nameless ghosts, those who only appear when all hope seems lost. Because there are legends who don't need medals. They only need a frequency to prove that they still guard these skies' eternal vigilance. Channel 7 hadn't been activated in 12 years, not since the day Phantom Recon was officially dissolved, following what military historians would later classify as the Syria-Iran border incident, though the full details remain buried in files so classified that even most generals had never seen them. Secrecy at its peak. Phantom Recon had been something beyond conventional military understanding, defying all norms. They weren't soldiers in any traditional sense. They had no official ranks, no service records, no medals or commendations, sacrifices unseen. They existed in the spaces between official operations, handling missions that were too sensitive for regular forces, too dangerous for diplomatic solutions, and too critical for failure, high-stakes gambles every time. Haley had been Phantom 7, the unit's primary reconnaissance pilot and extraction specialist, her role so vital. She had flown into places that didn't exist on any map, retrieved assets that officially were never there, and completed missions that would never appear in any historical record, feats of bravery forgotten by design. For 8 years, she had been a ghost in the truest sense, someone who operated with unlimited authority but zero recognition, invisible yet indispensable. The Syria-Iran operation had been their final mission, tragic and defining. Intelligence suggested that a rogue cell had acquired Soviet-era nuclear materials and was planning to sell them to the highest bidder, Nightmare Fuel. Phantom Recon was tasked with infiltrating the compound, gathering evidence, and if necessary, eliminating the threat permanently, a do-or-die endeavor that tested every limit. What they hadn't known was that the intelligence was compromised from the beginning. Oh, the betrayal that stung deep. The entire operation was a trap, carefully orchestrated by enemy forces who had spent months studying Phantom Recon's operational patterns, lurking in the shadows like vengeful predators. When Haley's team inserted into the target zone, they walked directly into an ambush that had been designed specifically to destroy them one by one. Can you imagine the horror unfolding in real time? As she watched her teammates, people who had become closer than family, bonded through fire and blood, fall to enemy fire. Phantom 1, their leader who had once extracted her from a Taliban stronghold in Afghanistan with sheer grit and unyielding determination. Phantom 3, the communications specialist who could hack any system in the world but couldn't dodge the sniper's bullet that found him in a cruel twist of fate. Phantom 5, the medic who had saved her life twice but couldn't save himself when the compound exploded around them in a deafening roar of chaos and despair. Haley survived not through luck but through a series of impossible choices that still haunted her dreams, waking her in cold sweats night after night, heart-wrenching decisions that tore at her soul. She had been forced to abandon her wounded teammates to complete the mission, to gather the nuclear materials and ensure they never reached terrorist hands, a burden that weighed heavier than any cargo. The success of the operation came at the cost of everything she had once believed about honor, loyalty, and the value of human life, shattered illusions that left her forever changed. When she finally extracted from the disaster zone, carrying evidence that would prevent a nuclear catastrophe but bearing the weight of her team's sacrifice like an invisible scar, she was debriefed by officials who seemed more concerned with damage control than with the lives that had been lost. How cold and detached, prioritizing paperwork over humanity. Phantom Recon never existed, they told her flatly, as if erasing heroes was just another day at the office. There are no records, no next of kin to notify, no graves to mark. You were never there, and neither were they. The unit was dissolved immediately, vanished like smoke in the wind. Haley was given a new identity, a medical discharge from the Air Force that cited psychological trauma from a training accident, a fabricated story that masked the truth, and enough money to disappear quietly into civilian life, starting over with a hollow heart. The Channel 7 frequency was supposed to be deactivated permanently, another piece of evidence that Phantom Recon had never been real, wiped clean from history. But Haley kept a radio tuned to that frequency, a silent memorial to the people who had died in service to their country and would never be remembered by it. Her quiet act of defiance, a whisper against the void. Now, as her Cessna flew through the Nevada sky with an F-22 escort that treated her with the reverence reserved for visiting heads of state, surreal and humbling all at once, she understood why Colonel Weiss had recognized the code, a spark of connection across the years. He had been one of the few people authorized to coordinate with Phantom Recon during their operational years, one of the even fewer who knew that they had existed at all, a keeper of forbidden knowledge. The lead F-22 pilot's voice crackled through Channel 7, his tone completely transformed from the aggressive interceptor of minutes before now, laced with awe and respect. "Ma'am, Phantom lives on. We're honored to escort you to your target zone. Your mission parameters are understood and respected." The research station appeared ahead. A cluster of temporary buildings and equipment positioned in what appeared to be the middle of nowhere but was actually one of the most carefully monitored locations in North America, hidden in plain sight, teeming with secrets. As Haley began her approach, she could see the medical emergency team already assembled on the makeshift landing strip, their equipment ready for immediate patient transfer, faces etched with urgency. Her landing was textbook perfect, the kind of precision approach that came from years of setting down aircraft in hostile territory under impossible conditions, flawless under pressure. The Cessna touched down exactly where it needed to be, rolled to a stop within meters of the medical team, and was airborne again with the critical patient within 4 minutes, swift and life-saving. During the flight to the nearest trauma center, Haley monitored the patient's vital signs through equipment that her aircraft wasn't supposed to have, using medical training that wasn't listed on any of her civilian certification skills, honed in the fires of forgotten battles. The man's life hung in the balance, teetering on the edge, but her steady hands and years of crisis management kept him stable until they reached definitive care, a testament to her unyielding will. As she watched the medical team rush her patient into the emergency room, Haley felt something she hadn't experienced in over a decade. The satisfaction of a mission completed successfully, a life saved rather than lost, pure, unadulterated joy bubbling up. A victory measured not in classified objectives achieved, but in the simple continuation of human existence, a heartbeat preserved. The flight back to her Nevada base was different from any she had experienced since leaving Phantom Recon, transformative and poignant. The F-22 escort maintained respectful distance but remained visible on her radar, a silent acknowledgement that some things were more important than regulations or restricted airspace. Transcending bureaucracy. She was no longer just a civilian pilot who had violated military protocols. She was someone whose authority transcended current command structures, someone whose past service had earned permanent respect from those who understood what sacrifice really meant. Deep, unspoken gratitude. When she finally landed at her home airfield as the sun set over the Nevada desert in a blaze of orange and gold, Haley found a package waiting in her hangar, mysterious and touching. Inside was an old military map, a faded identification card that bore no name but showed her much younger face, full of youthful fire, and a fragment of a Phantom Recon unit patch that had somehow survived the official erasure of their existence, a relic of the past. The accompanying note was brief. "Still flying, still watching. The frequency remains open. W." Colonel Weiss had kept his own silent vigil, maintaining awareness of the ghost who had chosen to remain in service even after her official existence had been terminated, loyalty that endured. Some debts, the note seemed to say, could never be fully repaid, but they would always be remembered by those who understood their true cost, etched in the soul. 1 week after the incident, a mysterious package arrived at the old Phantom Recon training facility, echoing the gesture. Inside were a weathered tactical map, a faded military ID card, and a torn unit patch fragment. The attached note read simply, "Still flying, still watching. H." Colonel Weiss gathered his newest junior officers, fresh from flight school with no knowledge of Channel 7 or its ghost. In the secure briefing room passing the torch, he told them about the frequency that had silenced an entire sky, a tale of legend. "Some people are no longer mentioned in textbooks or honored in ceremonies," he began gravely, "but when they speak, the entire airspace stops, not from fear but from respect. They earn that reverence through sacrifices most of us can't imagine, unthinkable bravery." Word of the Channel 7 incident spread quietly through military networks, carried by informal communication that bypassed official channels but reached those who needed to hear it like whispers in the wind. Veterans from classified roles, pilots who had flown missions that didn't officially exist, and intelligence operatives who understood the cost of anonymity began taking notice, stirred by the story. A small group led by a retired Air Force psychiatrist and supported by Colonel Weiss's quiet influence established the ECHO Project, a beacon of hope. The program operated in the shadows of official military support systems, providing assistance to former operatives who had lost their identities, serving operations that could never be acknowledged, compassion in the darkness. The project's mission was simple, but revolutionary. Help those who had sacrificed their official existence find ways to contribute meaningfully to civilian life, while honoring skills gained in roles that officially never existed, rebuilding lives piece by piece. They provided job placement, psychological support, and most importantly, a community of people who understood what it meant to be erased from history while still carrying the responsibility of protecting its solidarity in silence. The first name on their memorial wall bore no photograph or service record. Phantom 7, last seen above Echo Zone, always listening, eternal watch. Within months, the ECHO Project had quietly helped dozens of former operatives transition from invisible military roles to civilian careers, where they could continue serving communities, making a difference unseen. A former CIA operative became an emergency room surgeon. A Delta Force veteran started a wilderness rescue service. A military intelligence analyst began teaching advanced mathematics. Each carried the understanding that their most important work might never be recognized, but that didn't make it less valuable. Profound wisdom. They had learned, as Haley learned, that true service wasn't about medals. It was about being ready to act when others couldn't, stepping up in the clutch. The project's quiet success attracted unexpected attention, ripples spreading far. Medical emergency services reported unusually skilled volunteer pilots appearing during critical situations, swooping in like guardian angels. Search and rescue operations found support from individuals with extraordinary tactical awareness, turning tides in dire moments. Disaster relief efforts discovered coordinators who could organize complex logistics with military precision, but civilian compassion impressive and heartfelt. None sought recognition or official acknowledgement. They simply appeared when needed, performed with exceptional confidence, and disappeared back into civilian life, leaving only results and the knowledge that someone was still watching over communities they had sworn to protect. Unseen heroes. I don't talk much, not because I'm cold or have nothing to say, but because I was trained to keep silent to the very end, even when the price was being forgotten. A vow etched in my bones. But that day when they surrounded me with those gleaming F-22s second threatening to shoot down my old Cessna, intimidating beyond words, I knew I didn't need to fight back with force. I only needed to remind them of one thing: a signal, a memory, a command code that only those who had lost everything, those who had walked through hell with me, would truly understand. Profound and personal. I'm no longer a soldier for any branch of service. But I still fly, not because of orders from above, but because someone still needs me to arrive on time, to bring hope to the farthest corners of the world, where roads can't reach, and time means everything. My calling? Unbreakable. For 12 years I carried the weight of Channel's 7-inch silence, a heavy, solemn burden. It wasn't just a radio frequency. It was a graveyard of voices that would never speak again, echoes of the fallen. Phantom 1, who taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear but flying into danger anyway, wise words that saved me. Phantom 3, who could break any encryption but couldn't break his promise to never leave a teammate behind, loyal to the end. Phantom 5, who saved more lives than any medal could count but couldn't save himself when our final mission went wrong. Tragic heroism. They died not for glory or recognition, but for the simple belief that some things are worth protecting even if no one remembers who protected them, selfless to the core. I survived not because I was stronger or smarter, but because someone had to carry their memory. Someone had to keep the frequency open for those who might still need it. My duty, my honor. When those F-22 pilots heard Channel 7 crackle to life, electric and alive, they weren't just hearing my voice. They were hearing the echoes of every phantom who had ever flown into the darkness so others could live in the light. They were hearing the promise that some guardians never abandon their posts, even when officially they no longer exist. Eternal vigilance. The mission that day wasn't about breaking rules or proving I could still access classified frequencies. It was about remembering why we learned to fly in the first place. Not to dominate the sky, but to serve those on the ground who look up and hope that someone is watching over them, inspiring purpose. Today, I don't run from my past or toward my future. I hover in that space between official and unofficial, between acknowledged and invisible, ready to answer when the frequency opens and someone needs a ghost to become real again, poised and prepared. Channel 7 will always be open, not just as a memorial to those who died in shadows, but as a promise to those who still live there. Because some voices only speak when the sky forgets who guards it, and when they do, the heavens themselves. Remember why they need protecting, profound and timeless. The phantom frequency lives on, and so do we. Subscribe to QH Incredible Stories if you believe some voices only speak when the sky forgets who still guards it. And when they do, the world stops to listen. Recognizing true heroes beyond titles, join the legend.